Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Refraction Rotor. For starters, today I brought my cat with me, so if you hear me or the cat purring at any point, then uh, say hello. Secondly, today I wanted to cover all the chips, their powers most likely, and their purposes in the Mechanoid Commanders, and alternative purposes and uses and how they work. For starters, their descriptions alone indicate heavily what they are. A mechanoid band synchronization microorgan. Microorgan can be discarded because micro means millions, but there's no organs that's millionths of a meter, which is what this indicates. Most likely what it simply means is that it's a chip that's small compared to the bulk of this thing. Secondly, mechanoid band synchronization. What it likely means here is mechanoid's bandwidth utilization, which would explain what mechanoid signal chips are able of using. The wiki says, hold on, let me just pull that up real quick. Quick signal chip. The wiki says that they're used for the Mech Commander helmet, the bandwidth pack, Diabolus, control sublink, and Mech gestation processor. All of things that would totally make sense to use this signal chip in. Mech Commander helmet is, simply boosts your bandwidth, and the bandwidth pack also boosts your bandwidth. The Diabolus makes slightly less sense, but most likely what it's used for is the Diabolus is most likely the one that consumes the most energy, and that's talking from the player standpoint, with its Hellsphere cannon. And with its Hellsphere cannon, that likely means that this Diabolus, or something like it, what's it called? This Diabolus needs a lot of, energy to use, and because it needs a lot of energy to use, it needs a large amount of signals to process all that energy. Likely, these red things are called hypercapacitors, I believe, and the sublinks are present in both of them to allow for waste heat management. Power focus chip, on the other hand, is weirder. Unlike the Diabolus, we confirm that the War Queen is most likely the one that only uses two kinds of chips. It most certainly uses the power focus chip because it drops one. Oh, the cat just touched the camera. And it uses a nanostructuring chip to create. And she touched my hand. This is a cute kitty. Whatever. Point is, the War Queen is likely the only one who uses two of them. And here's likely for what purpose. Power focus chip, an energy focusing mechanoid microorgan, which in my head more or less translates to this thing is capable of using energy in miscellaneous ways that aren't possible by technology, and is capable of being very good at processing power. Both of which are things that are necessary in the War Queen. For starters, straight up lots of processing power is necessary if we're going to be dealing with war urchins, each of which need to connect to the Queen, at least for a little bit, 6 hours. And the shield can be used in the development of pawns like the Centurion. And finally, we have the nanostructuring chip. This chip says a molecular restructuring microorgan, and it is the most concerning chip to discuss. Because if I enter God mode here, biotech, waste pack atomizers, in addition, nanostructuring chips are used in the creation of a War Queen, as well as just some Mechalord stuff and repair stuff. This nanostructuring chip is the most concerning because it, as far as I can tell, can be projected energy into itself. I don't mean like energy, electrical energy, just general energy. And this nanostructuring chip is likely able to use energy to manipulate matter at a much, much greater efficiency than we see any other technology modern day capable of. This technology is present in the waste pack atomizer to turn waste packs into complete air, literally. This violates the laws of thermodynamics, but I'm going to get into that later. But the Apocryton uses it to resurrect mechanoids. By having charges of energy that it boosts charges up before a battle, it then projects these charges into the nanostructuring chip, which the nanostructuring chip then uses to resurrect the mechanoids by partially healing them. And, it says here, resurrect recently killed mechanoids by supercharging their self-repair processes. That's what this thing can do. And in the War Queen, it's present to simply release war urchins and these warriors are weak, and they have minimal power, and I can just kill them immediately. But whatever. Point is, War Queens and Apocryphons use these, but most likely, if you had enough energy, the nanostructuring chip could be most likely used to end worlds, literally. Project like a sun's worth of energy into a gigantic version of this chip, and you can probably literally nanally restructure the entire fucking planet, decomposing it into all of the same element slowly. And this is the thing, nanostructuring chip is nano means billionth. So when we say nano and molecular, is that supposed to mean that it restructures protons and electrons, or is that supposed to say that it restructures just molecules? Because both of those are concerning, but particularly specific protons, because that means you can fundamentally change matter. This is where what's it called? The laws of thermodynamics can be violated with this chip. Well, that's probably not canon. If it is canon, then that's really weird, because then that means you could probably end the whole universe with this thing. Point is, I was thinking of alternative uses for the nanostructuring chip, and I realized that there's nothing you really can't do, even with molecular restructuring. For starters, it could be useful to produce a version of a mech gestator that uses the nanostructuring chip to gestate mechanoids, similar mechanism found in the War Queen, just to actually produce mechanoids much faster. Or maybe it can be used to produce a version of the large mech gestator that reduces the amount of pollution produced, or outright removes it. After all, it would make sense given the fact that this thing is so weird. Well, hold on. Alternative uses would be to turn flesh into organs. Flesh is organs, and when you're taking organs and turning them into flesh, and by butchering a body, then that makes sense. Why can't you structure them back with enough energy? This would be useful for a lot of money, but still would cost maybe a tremendously powerful mood penalty that's difficult to cancel out. More ideas is producing resources out of thin air, especially if it's actually restructuring protons and neutrons. Producing steel and materials out of thin air, automatically producing components or the necessary resources into components and advanced components, perhaps autonomously, producing mechanoids and deconstructing them back into resources to allow for a completely autonomous version of a mechanotype that fights for you perfectly compared to a player. Maybe a version of the growth vat that does stimulate the brain in a perfect way. After all, maybe it would cost multiple Apocryphon kills. It allows you to construct a single growth vat. It allows you to raise a child, maybe much slower, but consuming a lot more energy, being dangerous to the child's development, potentially killing them, etc., etc. But raising them in such a way that they still end up half-decent human beings, literally. Death Rest, I don't think of many opportunities because this is like a genetics Archotech thing, even if it's not technically Archotech. And maybe finally it can be used to produce all of the labor mechs, but better. Tunnelers can benefit from this by molecularly decomposing the rocks that they're mining away to turn them into air the same way that waste packs do. What else? Oh, yes. Right here we have, for starters, basic mech tech. Let's just finish these, I suppose, to produce them at all. Point is, the basic mech tech construct within Clean Sweeper and Agrahand, as well as lifters and militars. Labor mechs are present Agrahand, Constructor, Clean Sweeper, and Lifter. Lifter could be perhaps just simply built bigger to haul normal amounts of resources, quote unquote. Constructoids could be built to build much faster if they're not able to build higher qualities. Clean Sweepers are perhaps able to molecularly decompose dirt, perhaps making room extra clean for a period of time. And Agrahands can't really benefit from this. They can just molecularly restructure the plants at near instant speed, but that's game broken and pointless, so not useful. Standard mech tech, of course, has the Tunneler, as the only labor mech acquired. Tunneler is useful, but again, as I already said how they'd be used. Remote high mech tech could unlock perhaps a version of the Fabricore that is capable of producing much slower than even human, but capable of producing normal to excellent quality items. Maybe it can even be, maybe there can even be an implant added that allows you to supercharge its creativity, that allows it to produce legendary items. Paramedic's biggest issue is that they tend slowly. Why not fix that with this and allows them to tend really quickly, at least normal speed? And there's no labor max unlock it. But what's it called? No labor ultramech. No labor max unlock ultramech tech. Point is, I would want to say, signal chips are used in the Diablos, or dropped by it, because it's using the energy using the signal bands to focus the energy. They're likely less necessary for the Mechanoid Hive, which is why it only drops one, and you can resurrect yours. War Queen likely uses this as a general computation mechanism for the blueprint storage and actual production of a thing, and the Apocryphon uses it to atomically supercharge. Well, War Queen does it as well. To atomically supercharge. What's it called? Atomically supercharged, near recently killed bodies to resurrect them. But given that the War Queen has the power to release war urchins and literally take raw steel and take raw steel and convert it directly into war urchins, maybe it's the fact that it has a dedicated, what's it called, forming sac? Yeah, or is it? Forming sac. Which, by the way, killing it does nothing, not even affecting it, since it has 1k health. Jesus. Point is, maybe it specializes in, maybe there's some downsides, such as being necessary inside of a delicate container, which is why the Apocryphon is weird, or maybe why you can't construct it. But that's just the point. Nanostructuring chips, if no more evidence is provided, make me fear that they could end the world. And they're likely what Architects use to generate these kinds of devices like Architect cells and psychic technologies. But I guess I have to end this with the obvious cliche. This is just a theory. Sorry. This is just a theory. I don't mean to rip off MatPat. Point is, these kinds of things, I don't see anyone talking about their canon purpose. And I wonder why other factions don't pay you more for them. But that's just it. This is Refraction Rotor, and I'm out of here.